Welcome to Tattoo Shop Talk, and this time little tips and tricks on how to choose your needles and grips and tips and all those combinations. We'll talk about needles, tubes and grips, and we'll start with our experiences, and then we'll talk about things where we changed our mind and what's the variables. So stick to the end, there'll be some valuable things up and down and all over the place. Viewer had a question. Could you tell more about grips and tips and needles and all that? And first I was like, when you're kid, triangle goes into triangle and square goes into square. And I was like, 7 goes into 7. But then I was like, yeah, but there's also option, because there's thin needles, thick needles, open needles, and then preferences where people like them a bit more loose and all that. So maybe that's where you could chip in with your expertise on a subject. So, tubes, needles, tips.
I can tell you one thing, that from the first day I started tattooing, I heard different opinions about what's better, what's not, and all you can do is just try out and see yourself if it works for you. You think it works till you find a new way, try a new thing, and then you'll realize, oh, that guy who told me that way is the good way, turns out it's not that good. I used some specific tattoo machines where I was putting out needle, like the gap was just big, the needle was going out. I really liked it. I could see the tip of the needle coming out from the tube, but the machine was working really, it was a strong machine, so I can do the lines really quick. But now I bought a new coil machine and I realized that, man, like, it's so easy when the needle is ending where the tip is. So I can put the tip till the skin, and then I don't have to control my hand as much, how deep the needle goes in. So the flow is better, but I guess it depends on the machine as well. Also the ink flow better, I think, when the needle is not out that much.
I noticed that, like with regular needles, I was kind of taught by the dudes, keep it out, and it's preferably to have, like, I don't know, if you work with 7, then get tube from like 9, so it's more like space and flow and whatnot, and to have it out, because you kind of sort of have more control, and if you need to go deeper, you always have that option. Plus you kind of, if person jumps, you always have that option. Get it off. Then I switched to cartridge needles, and then I noticed that specifically with cartridge, that thickness probably of a thing and how much needle is out doesn't work at that distance I'm comfortable with. So I had to pull the needle a lot more in to get the same.
Like for every setup is a different way to do it. If I'm gonna tell you that you have to take 11 liner tip grip for 9 liner needle, it might work, but it's not gonna work for everyone, because the setup is completely different from person to person. So it's really like hard to tell what's the best. The only way I realize, it's like you have to try yourself. You have to listen what people say around and try things, and you have to be ready to experiment. People like to talk and tell what's the best and what's not, and
everyone knows this.
Yeah. So it's really hard, but I think for coil machines, I really think that for coil machines it's better to keep the needle where the tip ends, The hit can be much bigger, so it's really depending on how machine works. It's really important that you feel, like we talked before, the vibration, because doesn't matter how I set up my machine, if the needle is out completely or it's ending where the tip is. I always end up with that feeling how the skin vibrates, and you can sense when it's getting too deep or when it's not enough deep, And this is like this you have to kind of learn the sense, That's one
vibration
and then you can like do the rest, you can sometimes experiment, but just don't stick with the one specific thing. That's why actually what I was teach from beginning, it's really good for a tattooer to buy new machines from time to time, because your view will get bigger and you will understand that there is different machines, that you can buy actually better machine. Suddenly you can make cleaner lines.
And also on a lining thing, it's like you put 7 in 7 or 9 in 9 tube, but there's also tight 7, and there's like round shader. And there's different sizes of needles, because sometimes you can put 7 tight in a 5 tube and it fits fine because it's like skinny and tight, you know. There's
Also, the quality of needles
Yeah,
change,
there's
and that
sizes,
also,
groupings.
yeah. I learned like, for example, I did the dot work for a few times back in Riga recently, and the guys came and told me like, hey, you have to use this 5-liner. It's a bit smaller and a little bit sharper than like some other brand needles. And I really used it, and it seemed like the same kind of needle, and I was shocked how different it was. And you can see the dots were much cleaner than.
Yeah, there's the like how tight they are, how
Yeah.
thick are the needles themselves. Then it's like textured, non-textured, and then the taper of needle is it like does every single needle is like, you know, this or that, and those. Like,
It's not all about technique. It's about.
it's not apples to apples. It's like a lot of
Yeah.
variables.
Yeah, so, and the only way you can learn this is just to try and ask and try on yourself and see how things go. But for sure, if you have a bad needle, you might not make as clean tattoo as you would like to.
And even with cartridges, like you don't have options of combining them. It is what it is, like. But some people say like, oh, the flow on this brand is better because it's even if it's the same size and grouping, it will differ from brands because one have like different technology going on, other have different quality going on, and like you have to really try a lot of things in different scenarios of types of work to find that like, okay, I know with this machine this needle works the best for this place. There's a few kind of things that work overall, but they don't work the best. Like you have to find your specific combinations that work for you. Also your speed, your motion,
Yeah,
how you
it's
pull
really
the
tricky.
lines and all that.
Because sometimes, like you get stuck with one kind of setup. When you're fresh with that setup, you kind of have this feeling, fuck, something's wrong. I have to get used to it. And then after some months or weeks or maybe a year, I don't know, depends how you work. But sometimes you get used to it, and then you kind of realize, oh, I think now I know how to work with this setup. But I really believe that actually you just get used to what it's capable of doing it with this setup. And when you get used to it, you think it's all good, but actually from other people's view, it does not look as good. So that's why you have to actually change and experiment. Because sometimes you just think it's good enough, it's actually not.
Like recently I got that machine with magnets and I kind of given up on regular needles because I was like, it's coil machines and there's this goes wrong, that goes wrong. And then I tried it a bunch of times and some of them were confusing and some of them worked so good that I was like, wow. Like now I just want to use this for that specific
like
thing.
there is setups you can straight away tell that, oh man, this is much better. That's what happened. Like when I bought Dan Cuban machine, I was struggling for. First of all, it sounded really crazy, and I had to get used to all this. And then I realized, oh, okay, I work with this and that, and for back pieces and for big, large scale pieces, it was so easy to work. It was really fast for me to make lines. But then somehow that machine got fucked during the years, and I bought new coil machine for lining. From the first moment I made the line, I was like, oh my god, this is how actually a line should look like. It was like a big contrast. So don't stick with one thing all the time.
You get in comfort, but then at different stages of your skill, you can go back to the good old 5 years ago thing and be like, oh my god, this suddenly works.
No, but I mean, Dan Cuban, amazing machine. With this new machine I have, I feel much more comfortable with doing especially big scale work because I go every direction and I don't have to worry to go too deep because, like I said, the needle is out.
And what about, have you used, like I have never ever in my life used diamond tips. So I know that they exist, but I have no idea.
Yeah, it's the good thing about diamond tips is you see really
better.
well the needle, and when you see the needle you kind of also see the line. It does not cover the view that much, and you can also see the ink flow, and it's much easier
I heard
in some ways, but some machines don't work for
and some people do some weird directions that it would pop in the wrong kind of corner of a thing, but I know I heard it. I can't even imagine.
That's when you. I think that's when you. The direction where you do line is wrong. When you start to do line sideways, the needle will pop out from
Yeah,
the
makes sense.
gap. And that's like I tried it as well. I know what they're talking about.
I know.
That's one of the reasons why I don't use diamond tips. But there have been moments when I used the diamond tips and I was like, oh man, it's so easy to see everything what's happening on the skin. So I would say that diamond tips are good for seeing what's going on around and what the needle is doing.
And on the cartridge department, there's just so many different brands that you have to find, again, one that works for your budget, speed and all that, because there's all sorts of crazy needles in the regular needle world, like hollow liners and custom made, and what you can imagine, it's out there.
There's so much shit going on. Like, I mean, for me, I can just say my experience, my opinion, but I'm not even close to understanding which tip is the best for everyone, you know, or which needle is the best for everyone.
Yeah. And
It's
also
just
also the quality, because there's like those black old super cheap plastic grips that grip would turn around and all that. So again, there's also that price per performance, so you can't expect much from the cheapest shit. The most expensive one, there's all sorts of heavy and crazy tips and grips and that work probably just fine, but they are expensive. So would you want to do them? But in that middle area, you can find those unicorns that work just fine.
I've heard a long time ago that ink flow is really good for metal grips, and when you use metal grips, and actually when I just started tattooing, I used these not diamond grips, but I had metal grips, but they were like not diamond, but they were
like
on
like, angle.
Yeah. And I loved it, man. I used it for like 4 years and I loved it. But the reason why I stopped using them is just because I didn't want it to sterilize my grips anymore. So I started buying disposable grips.
Also, we had that period where we used metal grips but plastic tips, and everyone was like, oh no, I don't want to use disposables because they're too light, too soft and all that. And then somehow everyone who started to use, I think they evolved a bit and got a bit better.
Yeah, but too light is just because you're not used to it.
Yeah, and then they got a bit like stiffer, and then everyone was like, oh, but these are not spitting ink. They like, you just throw them, and suddenly like it took like 3 weeks of trying them, and everyone's like, oh, but they're not spitting, and like my life is not hell.
Yeah, it's much better. Best thing that ever happened with me was when I got used to disposable grips. I'm just like, I'm the happiest person in the world.
I worked in the shop in Ibiza, and guys started to use them, and he was just like, everyone, tattooist was still working with metal grips, and he's like,
stay true.
No, he was just like, listen, these are rules, give it 2 weeks. And like 2 weeks later, everyone was like he said, like in my shop it's like this, and you have to use them. Give it 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, everyone's like, fuck those things. It's like, I go to next country, I just order to the next shop, couple of boxes, and I don't care about
I
them.
remember how stupid I was thinking when I saw first guy using the disposable grips. I was like, oh, lazy ass, he just don't want to fucking clean his tubes. But then you think like, why would you have to clean them if you don't have to? It's much less risk for you to get some fucking shitty
And
disease.
expense-wise, like if you think of a shop, if you are the shop, then it's like you buy disposable, or you need a separate room where to clean. You need an autoclave, you need like a fucking this and that. Like you need the whole process, where instead of that you can turn that room into another tattooing room, you know, and just have disposables.
It's just much easier, and when you get used to it, it's like, woo, life is good.
And for those who cry about plastic, it looks like it's drifting into that hippie eco disposable things. You're getting all the ink caps and whatnot, so there probably will be grips and even
you definitely
machines.
can make these grips from weed plants.
Bamboo. Weed plants that grow like bamboo.
Yeah.
Big. And grow
So
fast.
in the future we're probably gonna use it from weed.
And you tattoo a customer, and then you give a grip to the customer, and he can smoke it.
A bong,
And then
bloody bong.
it's a piece of you, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your take? What's your best combination of grips, tips, or cartridge needles? And what's been your evolution, how you get to that point? Share that with us in the comment section. And like always, subscribe to the channel, check description. There's links to this gentleman's Instagram, where you can also reach out about this wonderful t-shirt. And yeah, and there's also a lot of other useful links to other videos, and there's a kit page where you can buy on Amazon all sorts of useful stuff for your shop or video productions like these. See you in the future episodes.
And if you think we are wrong,
I'll punch you in the throat, man!
do you love me?
Yes, it's good.